Good afternoon, everyone. Today is January 28, 2025. It's 1 p.m. This is the City of Prescott City Council study session. Before I call this meeting to order, I do want to ask for a moment of silence. Our esteemed Mayor Rollie Simmons passed away today. Rollie did 3 terms as our mayor for quite a number of years, and he was very well known and respected in our city. So let's have a couple of moments here for silence for Rollie. All right, thank you. We have one item under our agenda today, but we'll start with roll call.
Mayor Good. Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
I am here.
Councilman Montoya.
Still here?
Councilman Moore.
Here.
And Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
All are present.
So we have one item on the agenda today, a discussion, presentation, and request for direction regarding the Prescott Frontier Days Rodeo grounds. I thought I'd wear my cowboy hat today since my State of the City address recognized the fact that we are known as the world's oldest rodeo and recognized as in the annual Best of edition of the True West magazine. So my decision to wear my cowboy hat today in recognition of all the other hats in the audience, and the fact that I've always supported the rodeo, and I've been out there every single year since I moved here over a decade ago. So that doesn't indicate which side we're on here, but I did want to mention that I spoke to Senator Mark Fincham this morning, and he indicated that he had met with PFD over the weekend and was in the process of dropping a bill in the Senate today. He had his draft language reviewed by the Joint Legislative Council this morning, and he would be dropping the bill in the Senate hopper this afternoon. So our hope is that this bill would resolve some of the long-term difficulties that we've had regarding the $15.3 million allocation that came out of last year's legislative budget, and be able to resolve the difficulties that we've encountered, along with the legal challenges that are still in front of the courts. So with that said, we'll proceed with the presentation.
We do have a lot of people in the audience today, so I wanted to remind everybody of our standards for public participation in city council meetings. In the spirit of objective analysis and civil debate, we will follow a process format to accomplish sharing information in a productive and informative manner. Meetings and discussions will follow the following format. Our staff will provide a report and do a presentation, followed by council questions and discussion. We will then open the floor to public comment. With respect and decorum in mind, city staff and the council kindly request that the public wait for their opportunity to speak during the public comment portion. We ask you to debate the proposal or presented item and not criticize staff or other presenters. Any public outbursts will hear the gavel from the mayor asking for decorum, and if individuals continue to disrupt the meeting, they may be escorted out. Further, members of the public are expected to present only new information and ideas. We ask that you do not repeat comments of other public commenters or previous grievances, but think in a forward-focused manner. If a speaker displays hostility toward any of the other presenters or staff, they will also be gavelled and admonished. And if they continue the attack, the mayor or chair may ask that they be escorted from the chambers. Finally, applause will be limited to recognition during presentations and proclamations, which will not be taking place at this meeting, and will not be permitted during any other times during council discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. It's quite the intro there. Appreciate everybody who's who's here today. I love to see the hats. I feel a little bit like I'm at a wedding, and appreciate the hats that have kind of crossed over the aisle. That's outstanding. I feel a little bit like I want to just start with the bottom line up front. So Dallin Kimball, City Manager. And, the bottom line here is the Prescott Rodeo grounds are a property owned by the city of Prescott that are our responsibility to maintain and manage. And my assessment at this point is the city has not done a good enough job of maintaining and managing this property. And I don't say that meaning to point fingers at anybody specifically, other than just to say, the city as a whole needed to do better. And I regret that our lack of action in that area, or lack of being able to do this really well, has led to some division in the community. And that does make me sad. That's not the way we want to do it in Prescott. And so what we'll be asking for today is for council direction to step into our responsibility to lead and to help move forward with the future of the rodeo grounds. So I've said that again here, but now you have the slide. A few things you already know, and everybody in the room probably already knows. The rodeo started in 1888, known as the world's oldest rodeo. And that's a big part of not only the Prescott Frontier Days and the rodeo brand, but also the city's brand. And when you think about cities, corporations, everybody understands profit motive. Cities are all driven by brand motive. We want people to love living here. We want them to love doing business here. And the rodeo is a big part of that brand. It's moved to its current location, 1913. You see the city purchased the property in 2007 after what looks like years and years of conversations, finally pulled the trigger in 2007. The rodeo grounds obviously hosts a lot more than just the rodeo as well. A bunch of different events, a bunch of different organizations, including the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension, which runs programs like 4-H and Master Gardeners, and one of these days, Master Food Preservers. We had that conversation. The Auto Club, City of Prescott has offices there. There's a lot of good things going on, both with Prescott Frontier Days and in the property surrounding that area. The rodeo by itself generates about $7.67 million in economic impact. That's just that event for that week. A big impact for our community. There's also some, a competitive environment for things like rodeos. So we do a pretty good job of competing with other places. Our event is held in July. There's a lot of events held in July. Cowboys have a lot of options and places they can go. We compete and we get some of those professionals here because we're the world's oldest rodeo. I'm going to trip over that a few more times, I think, as we talk. We have a really strong brand, and we're competitive in terms of prize money, but we have some very significant challenges with our infrastructure that make our competition even more difficult. When we know what some of these challenges are. I was thinking about the Justin Room, for example, where some of the cowboys will receive medical treatment. And if I walked into an ER and that ER looked like the Justin Room at the rodeo, I would probably walk out of that ER and either try to do it myself or, I don't know, find one of my kids to help me or something. I don't know what I would do, but I wouldn't be staying in that ER. And that's the environment we're expecting these cowboys to be in. We know we have at least $10 million in water, sewer, power infrastructure underground that we need to address. There's a bunch of other issues with, the bathrooms and the grandstands and the HVAC and the sound system. And all of these things also contribute to impacts not only to the rodeo grounds itself, but to the neighborhoods that surround the rodeo grounds. And so, we see there's been, I think it's pretty well documented, there's issues with sound and noise that carries beyond the borders of the property with light, traffic, parking, sometimes smells, things like that. these are things that create challenges at the rodeo grounds and between neighbors. They're things that the city can help address, and we have a responsibility to do that is what I'm asserting here today. Also, outside of the rodeo operations, we have a number of other spaces that are just not adequate or sufficient for the needs. We've talked with the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension, for example. They need more room for meetings. They need more room for activities. They're interested in doing like a demonstration garden. That could work really well with some of the composting and other activities that are already going on the property. But the space isn't built for it. It's not designed for it. It doesn't allow for it. So there are more things we can be looking at here besides just the rodeo. A few more details you're probably familiar with. One is the lease. Of course, the city, when it purchased the property, inherited a lease that was pre-existing. We were able to start a new lease in 2016. Two relevant paragraphs to today's conversation. Paragraph 9 mentions that the city has responsibility to maintain the infrastructure at the property, which is something we have not done as well as we should have. And paragraph 6 talks about how by 2022, the city would contemplate, which is a nice loose word, would contemplate basically creating a vision for the property and a design for the future of the property and the future operations. Now, there were efforts there. I think we certainly contemplated and contributed to efforts there, but we didn't step up and lead like our agreement said that we would. And that's an area where we need to do that. Another resolution I'm sure you're familiar with from 2023 addresses just any process as we talk about future plans for the rodeo grounds and how it needs to be extremely public. And it lays out 7 public meetings that need to happen. Certainly as we engage in anything, we need to be mindful that this resolution is there. And I can't imagine wanting to do any sort of a process without a lot more or a lot of public meetings and input all along the way. Okay. All of that leading to this. Again, staff is seeking direction from the council to move forward, starting with taking accountability for the property itself, the consequences of not being more proactive maybe in the past, and restarting a path forward, trying to hit the reset button to the extent that that's possible. I think there are at least 3 key elements to that. I think we'll need to take them one at a time sequentially. But the first thing is we need a shared vision for what is this property? What can we do on this property that will mitigate impacts for neighbors, that will allow the rodeo to be successful for years and years into the future, and that will be a good deal for the city? So that's, I think, number one. I think that process starts with hiring a consultant. I know some of that work has been done already, but the city, I think, needs to be involved and needs to lead that process. That consultant then would, I'm imagining a steering committee as well, comprised of all groups, right? Rodeo ground users, Prescott Frontier Days, neighbors, city, so we can steer that plan. I imagine a number of public meetings along the way as we're building that plan so that anybody who wants to have input has that opportunity. When we have a shared vision for what the future of the property should be, then we need to look at the rezoning question. If that's necessary, that's something that the city needs to do. It's not for any of our tenants to carry. It's a city property. We're responsible for that. And then we may need to look at a number of some of the leases on the property. I mentioned the Prescott Frontier Day specifically, but it could be that we're looking at a number of those leases just to confirm or make changes to fit that vision that's been outlined. This is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of public meetings. It's a lot of involvement with the city. My hope is that if council is willing to give this direction to take this on, that it will also be a way that we can bring the community back together, that we can move past some of the hard feelings that I think our actions maybe have contributed to, and move back to a place where the rodeo grounds is something we're all proud of and love having in our community, and are just part of living in Prescott. So I don't have a lot else to say unless there's questions, but that's the item that we're presenting here today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, City Manager. I think almost everybody who's been involved in monitoring this process over the last few years would all agree that we have a number of priorities for upgrading and improving and repairing the infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity, the grandstands, having new restrooms established, upgrading the Justin Room and the other places. Those are the priorities. And I think when you look at the cost just for that somewhat of a short list, it's pretty substantial. And I think if we can free up this state budget allocation to be applied to those priorities, we could go a long way in improving the condition of the grounds, and any additional improvements would have to be planned for and agreed upon. But I think most everyone realizes that those are the primary concerns that we have at the moment. Councilman Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by thanking our city manager, Dallin, for his comments, but also for providing this direction and this approach. I think we're headed in the right direction finally. The one concern I have, and I'm sure a lot of you share this concern, is that as a city, priorities change and elected officials come and go. Even city managers come and go. And the one constant really is the rodeo. It's been around for a long time. And the neighbors. And so I'm really concerned that we get this right, that we don't start this process as an elected body, and then we have an election, and all of a sudden the priorities change again. And, you know, a few years down the road, we get a new city manager, and the process changes again. I think it's really important that as a city, we commit ourselves to a course of action that's going to resolve this issue long term. I spent Thanksgiving weekend just 2 months ago at Westworld during a roping event. I was there for several days, and that property's managed and owned by the city of Scottsdale. It's impressive, and I think city involvement is extremely important to make this work with the rodeo. The rodeo is a fantastic organization, but we need to partner together. I think what we were asking and what the rodeo was trying to do, was because we weren't doing it, was to move forward. And they had a master plan and they've had a vision, but financially that probably wasn't realistic for the rodeo to accomplish in and of themselves without city involvement, any more than Westworld could have ever happened without the city of Scottsdale getting behind it and making a financial investment. And so I do feel like this is the beginning of a new era, and I hope that we make this happen. Thank you.
Councilman Gambogi?
We are the world's oldest rodeo. It's part of our heritage. And I think credit to Dallin Kimball. Any of you that have been reading the newspaper or listening to the radio have heard me talk about putting first things first. And I can't understand why we would battle over something that's part of our heritage. So I think this is a good way to set the warring parties aside, get a objective perspective on the rodeo, and come up with a solution that we can both live with. So credit you, Dallin.
Councilmember Rusing?
Thank you. I remember coming up to Prescott in the summer for Rodeo Week over the 4th of July and enjoying the street dances and all the cowboys. And I'm telling you, it was a highlight of my week. And I'm so proud of the work that the 500 or 600 volunteers, rodeo volunteers, that are so dedicated year in and year out, all the time and effort they take to put this event on to benefit the city of Prescott. And I think that we're at a point where we can have a meeting of the minds and work together and make the improvements and make sure that this event continues on for another 100 years. And I would like to ask Dallin to give us an idea of what the makeup of the steering committee would be. And also, I strongly encourage that any contracts that we issue for construction are RFP'd and we get at least 3 bids. I'm not a big fan of these no-bid projects. Thank you.
Yeah, so our procurement rules would apply, so we would still need to do a lot of bidding for the dollars that we're talking about. For the steering committee, what we've been discussing is the idea of having maybe 2 members from the rodeo, 2 members from the neighborhood, another rodeo grounds user included, and then we've been talking a little bit about whether we include staff in the group or if staff just works with the group. But that's what we've talked about is what the committee would probably look like.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Dallin, I appreciate what you've laid out. I think it sounds like a way forward. I think I said to one of the neighborhood folks a long time ago when I was talking about the farmers market that I'd love for, at some point in the future, for this issue to be such that when we finally do move forward in resolution, that the first people to step up and support it are the people who've been opposed to it, maybe the process that we've been in thus far. So I'm excited to move forward, and I think it's going to be a long process, but I think if we do it right, we'll get it right. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. Dallin, you and I have had several conversations in the past about the deferred maintenance with all of our city-owned properties. So how do we, in this case, move forward and actually do a long-term codified plan? And then once we get the plan down, I know we're going to have to do it in phases because the money is not there. But how do we get something in writing where we continue to take care of and maintain our properties, not just the rodeo ground, but all of them? If I'm doing my own personal finances, I'm going to set aside 20% for deferred maintenance so I can stay up on it. I mean, here we find ourselves in a time in our country where everything is the most expensive I can ever remember it. And now we're going to go ahead and try to catch up with all this deferred maintenance. So I don't mind having, if we do get that money, I think it's great. We should have been doing this all along for the last 30 to 40 years with all of our properties, not just the rodeo grounds. But if we do this, we've got to find a way to establish a long-term plan on how we're going to spend this money and how we're going to get money to continue the maintenance that will surely come. So I hope you're thinking that way in terms of a long-term plan. And also I do want to make sure that you said it in your beginning statements here that whatever we do, the neighborhoods have to be considered in this. And I've shown you my concept plans for the area myself. I think that we've got to make sure that nobody's going to be 100% happy, but we have to achieve what we can to make sure that the whole area is at least a modicum of happiness about the way this is going to turn out. So I just want to make sure that we have that plan as we move forward with the maintenance part of it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, Dallin, am very, very supportive of your approach. I would love to see that we do have 1 or 2 city members be part of this so they're in from the ground level and don't miss any of the nuanced conversations that happen amongst this group. I do believe this is it's the part of the reason many of us moved to this community, the history, the heritage, and it's an asset, and we need to protect it and preserve it. And right now we've just been letting it go downhill. And as a neighbor, I love driving past the rodeo several times a day. So I do think this is incredibly important to do. I am worried, as others have brought up, about the total amount of investment that will need to take us to the vision. But if we could at least get started on phase one of the vision, and I'm getting too old to use porta potties. So I think we need to get things going and make life better for all of our participants who come from all over the country to attend every summer. So thank you.
Councilmember Rusing again.
Thank you. I'd like to stress the importance of the wonderful University of Arizona Cooperative Extension Center there. As a former 4-H'er, I just wanted to stress how important it is for young rural kids to participate in this program, and we have to make sure that they're included in the plans, because I'd sure hate to lose them. I think it's a wonderful location for them, being on the rodeo grounds. Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question about the map, and I was wondering if they could go back to the map real quickly. Under the one that says challenges, there we go. In the bottom center, there's an area that's designated as open space, and it has trails in it. And I know that we're not talking about open space today, but we have been talking about open space. So is this area part of our open space portfolio? I just want to have that conversation. And would it be part of the land that we're talking about protecting in perpetuity?
Yeah. So that's about 4 acres right there. And that property is included on the list of properties to be preserved in the charter.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Anything more, City Manager?
Maybe just one more thought, and that is that my intention in terms of leadership of this project would be to hand this over to our very capable Deputy City Manager, Mike Morris. Mike has 25 plus years of experience with recreation and activities, or in events specifically, including putting together events for places like the NBA. And I think has a lot of really good perspective that way. Also the economic development experience and other experience that I think will be very relevant. So he's the perfect person to lead. He's also kind of new to the community. He started 2 months ago. And I expect that will also give us an objective perspective as we look through, the way forward and how to meet the needs of all the groups involved. So.
Yeah, I think that's good that we'll have someone with some real mechanical experience, in this case, being able to usher through a plan and getting it bid and implemented, and moving it forward with that, as long as we have sufficient backup advice, so he understands some of the historical needs of not only Prescott Frontier Days and their volunteers, but just how big this rodeo is to the presence and the image of the city. Mayor Pro Tem, you had a last comment?
Yeah, I did actually, for clarification. So if the city is going to be taking the property over, in the designs, are we going to be taking into account other activities rather than just the rodeo? So when this design comes back, this will be basically a multi-use facility for the other, 365 days of the year that we have other events there? Or will this just be designed around a rodeo?
So the intent is to study the property. And so there will be other uses, like we've talked about the other offices that are there already. Is there potential for other events, right? Is it possible that maybe the farmers market could be held there, or things like that? We'll have to let the process kind of work its way through, but the intention is to look at the property and the highest and best use that we can get from that property.
So the design will be obviously for the rodeo, but with the intention of several other events happening there. So, for example, some of the fencing could be broken down when the rodeo's not there, and I don't know, a car show or whatever. So it'll be a multi-use facility at the end of the day.
I don't know the answer to that yet. I would expect that it will be, again, it's highest and best use for the property. And so there'll be considerations for the rodeo. There'll be considerations for the other users of the property. I would imagine that they'll have conversations about, well, could we do other events and those kinds of things. But what actually happens at the end, I don't know until we go through the process.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify something. I think Connie maybe misspoke that we were taking it back over. We're not taking it over because the rodeo has a lease. We're going to be working together. The city owns the property. You have a lease for the use of the property. And so I just think it's really important to clarify the verbiage that we're using from the dais, that we're not taking it over. We own it. You're our tenant. We're going to work together. Let's figure this out. Thank you.
Very good. I think we can move on to public comment now.
Yes, we can, Mayor. And just as a reminder, everybody, we've got 15 public comment cards, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes. And I'll call the names in the order that I received the card. So our first one is Sue Manuel.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me speak today. As you know, all know, I live in Prescott, very close to the rodeo. Is that better? Better? Okay. First and foremost, I find it a slap in the face as a city taxpayer and of Prescott and of the state of Arizona that first the city is even considering spending $15 million for a want for a small group of people and a failing business. Between the years of 2022 and 2023, PFD has lost over $1 million. After asking the city taxpayers for a tax increase for a need for the whole community, police and fire. And with the Arizona state budget being cut by millions of dollars and the state of Arizona being cut by the feds for money that they were expecting to get. Second, I do not know anyone who is against the rodeo as it was or as it is now. We just don't want the monstrosity that is being proposed by PFD. The list of expenses that our city manager sent to Mark Fitcham is a list of expenses for the infamous master plan. 62 restrooms, really. The golf tournament down in Phoenix uses porta potties for a week's event. Secondly, as for your lease, the paragraph 6 does state that the city will contemplate. As any of you that have children know, many asks are given to us by our kids, and we contemplate them every day. Just because you're contemplating them doesn't mean you're going to get them. In paragraph 8, that states PFD is inspected the premises prior to execution of the agreement of the lease, accepts the premises as is condition, and understands that the city has no present or future duty or responsibility for repair or maintenance of the premises. PFD agrees to perform ordinary maintenance and repairs as needed. So if there's $15 million of repairs and maintenance, PFD should have been performing those all along. In paragraph 10, it says it's understood and agreed that the city has no present or future duty or responsibility to make any alterations or improvements to the premises. As for rezoning, the fairgrounds doesn't need to be rezoned, as PFD and the rodeo is grandfathered in as it is. There's no question. I have a couple questions, though, and I think one was answered about the construction being put out to bid. And the second one is, what is the market value of the property? And will PFD be charged that for 12 months of the year? Because they have effectively blocked off the use of that property by boulders and their berms that they have built. Thank you.
Ralph Hess.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Ralph Hess. I live in Prescott. I'm actually here to read a statement from Deb Thalassides. She's unable to be here today, and she authorized me to read this statement. Deb Thalassides is one of the individuals who initiated the process that resulted in Resolution 2023-1862. The other petitioner that initiated that process is Marty Siegel. She's also here in the chambers today. This is Deb Thalassides' statement. I wish to address the issue of deferred maintenance at the rodeo grounds. Since 2010, council agendas show the city has invested close to $2 million in maintenance projects for the rodeo grounds, including replacement of water mains, 2010, installation of biobasin and sediment control, 2015, and grandstand renovation, arena lighting upgrades, and culvert installation. This last project alone cost Prescott taxpayers $1.7 million in 2017. And now staff is saying all this must be redone and more. Meanwhile, this council just asked taxpayers to approve a sales tax increase because in part we could not afford to renovate 1990s era fire stations. Some of this council previously expressed concerns there were other pressing needs for the original $15.3 million state appropriation to the rodeo. The city manager's January 7th, 2025 letter to Senator Fincham confirms this. Dallin Kimball lists $17.8 million of, and I quote, the three most critical fiscal year 2025-2026 state funding needs. The rodeo ground improvements are not on Kimball's list of three. Further, if there is a spare $15 million rattling around in the state budget, why isn't the focus on wildlife mitigation and community hardening given recent events in California? For Prescott, wildfire is not a case of if, but when. And if you own a home here, you know insurance companies are already doubling and tripling premiums or pulling out of Prescott market altogether. Please explain to your constituents how a private enterprise like PFD receives priority over public safety and the three most urgent projects identified by Kimball a mere 3 weeks ago. Last, I want to debunk the myth that $15 million of rodeo improvements are justified because PFD is a moneymaker for the city. The $171,000 in tax revenue city staff says the rodeo generates is more than wiped out by the city's annual $50,000 cash contribution and the $193,000 PFD reported in 2023 for gross and rental income that would otherwise go to the city. In addition, the rodeo receives free rent, a multitude of in-kind services from the city, and keeps all revenues from the July 4th parade. These additional handouts put a significant dent in PFD's alleged $1.7 million economic impact. In short, this private, self-interested enterprise is already receiving significant taxpayer support, while their tax returns show the rodeo event alone lost a combined total of $2.8 million for the years 2021, 2022, and 2023. 2024 is not yet available.
Mr. Hess, please conclude your remarks. Your time's up.
Absolutely repair of existing restrooms and stands, but don't use our tax dollars for 62 new restrooms, new facilities, and the underground infrastructure. These items are only required for PFD's grandiose expansion plans. Please do not expect residents who already subsidize PFD to forego spending for public safety while simultaneously reducing their quality of life due to additional extravagant events at the rodeo grounds. That's from Deb Thalassides.
Howard Mechanic.
City Clerk, maybe you can announce the next few speakers so they could line up. If we've got 15 speakers, we could be here for quite a while.
Got Bonnie McMinn and then Karen Fenn.
Mr. Mayor, today we're talking about the possible expenditure of $15 million in public funds. Much of these funds would go to a specialized infrastructure that is geared for long-term use by the existing tenant, Prescott Frontier Days. The fairgrounds is the most valuable property that the city leases to a private party. Before investing $15 million, the city and the public are entitled to full financial transparency from their tenant. And we need to be comfortable that an organization that lost about $1 million over 2 years without paying any rent can now pay market rent long term before we make these investments. Mr. Mayor, I know you're aware of the serious documented irregularities in PFD's IRS filings as reported over 6 months ago by Tony Dennis in the Prescott E-News. PFD has never explained if they have problems with their Buckle Club's charitable status. Don't you think it's worth asking? That's all you have to do is ask. The public deserves this information. On top of that, yesterday I received a letter from IRS. IRS has not received Prescott Frontier Days 2023 990 filing. That's over 2 months after the deadline. Could you ask PFD why IRS does not have their 2023 IRS filing? All you have to do is ask. I'm not asking for too much. Mr. Mayor, I'm requesting also for you to ask PFD initially 3 questions to clarify the situation. 1, regarding funds transferred from the Buckle Club or the PFD Foundation to PFD during 2023 and 2024. PFD needs to provide any agreements between their groups, along with details of the total amounts of transfers and how the funds were spent, if for charitable purposes or not. 2, within 2 months, PFD, the Buckle Club, and their foundation need to release their full 2023 and 2024 financial records and IRS filings. 3, PFD needs to explain why IRS does not have a return from them for 2023. Mr. Mayor, this is the minimum I think we need. We need full financial transparency, but to start, we need these 3 things. I will give these questions to the clerk for your further consideration. I appreciate you considering that, Mr. Mayor. And finally, I'm asking that you and the city manager clarify if these meetings by the steering committee will accept public comment, because these meetings were set up under that resolution that was established. I don't know if we specified in there, but I would request that you specify that these meetings will be open to reasonable public comment. Thank you.
Bonnie McMinn.
I have a couple of handouts for council.
If anybody else has handouts, can you just bring them up to me, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak today. Bonnie McMinn from Prescott. We've heard a lot about the rodeo today. My comments reflect my background in financial accounting, sales, and marketing. What I've given to you, and I won't go through it in detail, but basically what you've heard already, a summary of PFD's financials, actually their revenues and expenditures for the last 3 years taken directly from page 2 of the 990, which is entitled Statement of Program Service Accomplishments. These revenues and expenditures represent the PFD's core business, which is the rodeo, which is what we're talking about today. I'll let those numbers sink in because there's a lot of red on there. I've also given you page 1 of the 990, which indicates a net loss of $659,000 in 2023, a net loss of $349,000 in 2022. These losses include other revenue sources, but these losses don't include any rent expense based on the current lease. Based on my observations, core business revenues are down year over year. Core business expenses are up year over year, with losses of $2.9 million over the last 3 years. That's a big number. Do these losses concern you as a landlord? Everyone on the dais either owns or has owned your own business or has worked for a large corporation. Could you report numbers like this and keep your business or your job? What would happen if the city hit the pause button, required the tenant to comply, as others have mentioned, accepted accounting and business practices, financial statements, and as Senator Fincham mentioned, financial statement and performance audits, a detailed business plan, a feasibility plan, marketing plan, prior to a penny being spent on improvements or a consultant? Is the city investing tax dollars in the fairgrounds for the world's oldest rodeo or something else? And this is I think is what you're going to hear from a lot of people, which is if it's the rodeo, that's fine. If it's the expansion plan, if it's phase one, that's something different. So with all due respect, the city must perform its fiduciary duty to the citizens of Prescott, all citizens, develop our own plan for the fairgrounds by starting with the clean slate, using the steering committee, as Mr. Kimball suggested, to determine the best and most beneficial and profitable uses for the citizens, for the land for the citizens. Keep the rodeo its 7-day event, make the necessary minimum expenditures, such as ADA, new restaurant, new seating in the historic arena, but don't spend the money on the sewer and the restrooms until you know what the bigger picture looks like. Because if you sink $15 million into this property, how are we going to recover from that if based on their financials, the institution isn't financially solvent long term? So I ask that you look at the luxury porta potties. You're already spending $10,000 a year for that, and don't re-engineer and take property away from people who live on Gail Gardner, because part of the proposal is widening Gail Gardner, which will negatively affect everyone in the southeast part of the city. Move the entrance
Ms.
to Miller
McMahon,
Valley
please
Road.
conclude your remarks.
Thank you. This is city property, and any tenant must demonstrate financial viability and pay its own way in terms of the market value lease. It's what our citizens deserve. Thank you very much.
Karen Fan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us. A lot of this issue is going on prior to you guys being on council, and so we appreciate the fact that you're having to deal with things that have been going on for a lot of generations. I am a former City of Prescott council member and vice mayor, 3-term mayor of Chino Valley, and I just retired as the U.S. Senate president, so I'm very familiar with what's going on here. First and foremost, what I want to say to you is thank you for addressing this. Number 2, we cannot move the rodeo if that is even a suggestion. Once we do, we will lose our designation as the world's oldest rodeo. So we need to move forward with this property or we will lose the rodeo. Number 2, the $15.3 million that is sitting at Treasurer Yee's office right now, I was part of getting that. And that money is what we call grant money, if you will. This is money that is, there's nothing free money, but for the lack of a better term, it is free money to the City of Prescott taxpayers that will go directly into improving City of Prescott taxpayers' property. So this is not money coming out of the City of Prescott General Fund or anywhere else. This is new money coming into us with no strings attached to it. We do understand, we agree 100%, there needs to be a procurement process. We are totally fine working with the City of Prescott on that procurement process to make sure that it goes well. Don't forget, $15.3 million in improvement not only is an advantage for the taxpayers, but it's also going to generate jobs and more economic development because that money is going to stay in Prescott. The purpose for that $15.3 million is to help the neighborhoods, not just the rodeo, but it's going to be better lighting, which is dark sky lighting. It is better sound system that won't disturb the neighborhoods. It is better ground covering so that we don't have any dust that kicks up. Number 1 is trying to improve the facilities, which is helpful for the neighbors in the City of Prescott. We're not here to try and hurt the neighbors. We're not here to try and make things worse. We're trying to make it better. I'll let someone else address the financial side of it in it because that's not my bellywag. I do want to say, though, please, I've been working with Mark Fincham, and Senator Fincham has good ideas in his heart, but the $15.3 million that's sitting in Treasurer Yee's office right now is money that's guaranteed. It's there. If we do not act on it and we go down this other path, there is a good chance we're not going to get that money. There is a good chance it will not be available in this year's fiscal budget. So I'm hoping we can work on dual paths. Why can't we go ahead and work to get this 15.3 while we are also working with the steering committee and the communities to make sure that we move forward and use this money for those things I have already mentioned. One of the other things I want to point out, this is not about just the rodeo. This isn't just about our history. This is about all of Prescott and the Prescott area. What goes on, the $7 million a week in economic development that goes on every year, just this year, just 1 year alone, that's what supports all of our local businesses. If you look at our local downtown businesses, the bars, the restaurants, the hotels, much of this is what carries them through for many, many months, particularly during the wintertime when we don't have after Christmas stuff. So this isn't just about the rodeo. This is about our taxpayers' dollars, which I'm talking about the state dollars that are coming into Prescott. I also want to mention very quickly, there's been questions about whether this is a violation of the gift clause. We have checked when we did the legislation on this because we've given money to other rodeos, other facilities, other nonprofits, and we've already been clarified not only through our legislative councils, but also through Attorney General Mark Brnovich, Attorney General Chris Mays have both said, all of them have said, this is not a violation of the gift clause. So that is off the table. It's just merely something that's being used to hold up and delay the court hearings right now because they keep getting postponed in hopes that this money will go away. I am
Ms.
hoping
Vann,
and
please
asking that
conclude
this
your
council
remarks.
please consider that we sit down, we keep this money, we work together for a good cause here, and let's not destroy our rodeo. Thank you.
Councilman Gambogi.
Here's a test to see if I've been listening. First, I have a question. I thought I heard Howard Mechanic say that the rodeo hasn't turned into 990 for 2023, but I see from Bonnie results from the 990 in 2023. So I'd like an explanation to that. And then secondly, before you start, Howard, a phrase that I've used before, I'm a proud lifetime owner of beagles, so I know a little bit about going down rabbit holes, and I got a sense that we're going down a rabbit hole. We're not here to re-engineer the rodeo. We're here to support or not support Dallin's proposal to come up with a steering committee to resolve it. So, Howard, go ahead.
The 990 was due on May 15th of 2024. You can ask for an extension till November 15th, 2024. Starting November 15th, 2024, several individuals in the community requested copies to examine copies at the office of Prescott Frontier Days. Request copies required by IRS regulations. They must allow public examination at a reasonable time and place. Initially, they were told that they could not release a 990 until they got a notice of acceptance from the IRS. After several people in the community contacted Prescott Frontier Days asking for 990s, they continually said, either we don't have it, we filed it, but we'll get it to you in 3 weeks. Finally, after 3 weeks, they released what you saw, unsigned, unsubmitted. As it says on the document, look at it, do not mail. You cannot mail a 990. It must be filed electronically. IRS does not have their own electronic system. You must go through a vendor approved by IRS to file and pay that vendor. When you file your 990, the vendor verifies by email to you that the 990 was sent. They say within 24 hours, you will get a notice that the IRS accepted the 990. IRS has notified me yesterday. They have never accepted the 990. So what you see is an unsigned written draft.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I'd like to remind the public and Senator Fan that the city of Prescott is not part of the lawsuit. We're not. We're not the ones being sued. It's between concerned citizens and the state. Okay? We did, however, offer to resolve the lawsuit and make it go away by being the fiscal agent for the money. And we were turned down, okay? Either by their attorneys or by the rodeo board. But we have been had that offer on the table to be fiscal agents so that we would get the money and there would be some oversight and transparency, okay? And in the meantime, I've heard that there's been like $250,000 in legal fees that have been run up over this. And who's paying that? You know, is it the rodeo paying that? And they're losing money, and they had an opportunity to settle this lawsuit and save $250,000. But I'm just telling you, we have made an effort to resolve this right at the beginning, and it's been allowed to drag on. And now we have Senator Mark Fincham who stepped in, and so we can get the money allocated to ourselves and not to the rodeo as owners of the property and manage the money and do the improvements with your help. Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to propose that we're off topic. The city manager laid out why we were meeting today, and the PFD is being vilified, and that wasn't on the topic of the agenda today. I think we want to hear from the community on how we can move forward in a positive way. And I don't think the comments we've heard so far have been helpful to what we're talking about here today. So I think we need to get back on topic. Thank you.
I think we are on topic. Maybe you don't like what's being said, but nevertheless, it's on topic. Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you. I think Councilwoman Rusing just brought up some points that I distinctly remember being a new member of council trying to save the $15.3 million. So I would like to call up a representative from the PFD to talk about Karen Fan, who's shaking her head. So I would ask her to answer Councilwoman Rusing's questions or points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate that. And thank you for bringing that up. At no time were we trying to infer that the city was involved with the lawsuit. We do know that was by private people. So I just want to make sure that is clear on your agenda. Someone else is going to address the financial questions, which really shouldn't be part of this conversations, but we will be glad to answer that. The $15.3 million that we are talking about obviously is something that we should be working for together to obtain, to get that. You had asked and offered that if we would find a way to settle that, and we had refused. With all due respect, that isn't exactly true. The way the legislation was written is that the money had to go through the foundation or through the Prescott Frontier Days Association. That's the way the legislation. So when the issue came up about can we give the money to Prescott and then try and work through that, the answer was at that time it was absolutely no, because the way the legislation was written, that it has to come from the foundation. Now, we have also been offering, and I'm not sure if the whole council knows about this yet, but we've also been offering and wanting to work with the city of Prescott by figuring out a way that if the law says that we have to do it this way, that doesn't mean that we can't accept the money and then work with the city of Prescott through your procurement process. It's always a tough word to say, and as well as making sure that everything is done exactly the way the city of Prescott would like it done, in accordance with us working together on that sort of thing. So there is a way around it. It's just that right now, the way the law was written and the way the money is being held there, it has to come directly to us. But we're certainly glad to work with you on all of that, okay?
Mayor, would you like to get back to public comment?
Mayor Pro Tem, got a last comment?
Yes, actually, I've got a comment on I think we're going to hear something about the finances, though. Okay, I'm gonna reserve my comment till after I hear about the finances. Okay.
Rex Henshaw. Judy Stahl.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City staff. Thank you so much for hosting this meeting today. I've lived in Prescott since 1992. I love the rodeo. I own the Prescott Center for Massage Therapy, and I've worked with a lot of cowboys over the years, and actually worked with some of the jockeys back when the racetrack was there as well. I now also am the CEO and founder of Voice for Values Political Action Committee. We are a pro-democracy PAC focused on ensuring that rural voters have their voices heard with elected leaders. I just wanted to say that with this plan, I don't want to see the neighborhood disturbed there. I lived in that neighborhood for many years, and it is a beautiful neighborhood. The plan apparently wants to put in a double in and out entrance on Gail Gardner, but why not put that on Rodeo Drive? It would have much less impact on the existing community there, where there are a lot of children and families. It's up and coming again. It's not just, as one person with a large platform in this town said, it's not just old people who are going to be dying off. So I would really like to see that considered because it just makes more sense, because you would end up on Miller Valley Road. You've got street lights in between once you've gone out onto the street there. The other thing is, and someone brought this up, but I didn't really hear anything much about it, that if the rodeo is running 10 days a year on that property and have a lease, but the city owns the property, why would we not get voices from folks who can use the property at other times besides just that 10-day period of time? That's all I've got for now. Thank you very much.
Edward Bowe.
Council, you all know me. I'm a neighbor of the rodeo. I have a suggestion. I say, make Prescott great again. Eric's idea makes a lot of sense. You just bought 76 acres of ranch land, which is zoned which was probably zoned improperly, out at the end of an unused runway at the airport. The 38 acres you have here is pretty much inadequate for parking, use of the rodeo. The infrastructure's shot. Start over. Sell the land. The highest and best use is not to keep a rodeo at the present location. Regardless of what Karen Fan said, the rodeo will not lose its designation as the world's oldest rodeo. Started in 1888. It was on that property in, 1913? There's a difference. So think about the alternatives. Think outside the box, which probably you can't do, but try. Try to modernize what's going to happen. New facilities where you don't have to rebuild the put together infrastructure that's there now. It's not worth saving. All right, that's what I have to say about what you should do next.
Tony Hamer.
Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity. The rodeo has been part of our focus of enjoyment in the Prescott area since 1913. Only recently challenged in terms of its impact on the community. An impact in this case would have been the tree lighting, the lighting of Courthouse Square. So those are the two major things which are part of our brand and that engender a lot of support from the neighbors, from the citizens, as well as from tourism and giving us associated tax levies So it's really part of our brand, those two things. If you believe that, then, it's disturbing that we should take one of those items and put it at risk in any way whatsoever. So let's be very serious in terms of our deliberations here. This is who we are as a city. We must preserve our past. Isn't this what our community survey said as well? We don't need to go out and resurvey. That data is out there for you to act upon in the better interests of all citizens. It's disturbing that a few citizens, and I don't mean to demean them at all, they have a point of view, but they act as activists in terms of this piece of our asset base, which is so important, and they disregard the public surveys and go ahead and ride roughshod over the opinions of people. This is very disturbing. Will the next move be to ban the Christmas lighting ceremony because that organization takes away the use of Courthouse Square for a couple of days? We could see that coming, couldn't we? What else is on the list? No boats on Watson Lake? Somebody might put their hand in the water. No car shows in city parks? Let's be real now. How many ways can we express ourselves to support the brand of this city? Our council needs to look very seriously at the plan which has been presented. And the four-letter word I really like is plan. But let's have a good scope, and that has been referred to in terms of conversations here today. Let's have a plan.
Mr. Hamer, your time's up. Please conclude your remarks.
I will, sir. That plan must be implemented with resources as well. So scope and resources are necessary for this plan. Thank you very much.
Matthew Halderson, hope I pronounced that correctly.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council, City staff. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Matt Halderson. I am the director of Yavapai County Cooperative Extension, and we are also leasees there at the Rodeo grounds. You all were mostly kind enough to come and visit me and speak with me about what Cooperative Extension does. I know a lot of people don't know what Cooperative Extension does, so I'm so happy that you could come. If you are unaware of what Cooperative Extension is, it is the service-oriented arm of the University of Arizona. We have extension in every single county in Arizona, and our job is to extend knowledge from the university to the public. That means that the people in Yavapai County get the same types of opportunities to learn even if you're not right in Tucson. So we do a lot of informal adult education. We do a lot of agriculture, family consumer health sciences, 4-H youth development. And I think it's really, really important work. When I took this job and I returned back home to Prescott after being gone for 12 years, I took the job because I was so excited about the opportunity to come back and serve not only Prescott, but all of Yavapai County. I was told that one of the biggest things we do is try and find new facilities for Yavapai County Cooperative Extension because our current facilities, they're just not up to snuff. They're not bad, but we are growing, and it's a very exciting time to be part of Cooperative Extension and the services that we can give. So there were a lot of talks of going out to North Prescott. There have even been talks about going out to Prescott Valley recently. After thinking long and hard about it and hearing about the plans that the rodeo has coming, it occurred to me that I believe that the best place for Cooperative Extension is to stay right at the rodeo grounds. And the reason is because I feel like there's the greatest opportunity to do good for our community through a synergy that can be achieved through the Yavapai County Fair, Prescott Frontier Days Rodeo, the Prescott Farmers Market Community Compost Project, and even when I think about the Antique Car Club there that's in the back, we could make a 4-H project out of that, right? There's always opportunities. In fact, I think that cooperative extension may be the unseen glue that can help solve a lot of problems for our community regarding these rodeo grounds. You know, there are ways of life that I think are going away here in Prescott as we become more urbanized, right? I want to see 4-H and agriculture last long into the future. I want to continue to educate people how to graft their own fruit trees and grow their own livestock. And I want to see the rodeo continue. I also want to see the citizens in the Gail Gardner neighborhood continue to live the lifestyle that they are accustomed to. So,
Mr. Alderson, your time's up.
yes,
Please
sir.
conclude your
Sorry, I
remarks.
rambled just a touch. I will just conclude that say, as you are considering what to do with this property, that you please consider Yavapai County Cooperative Extension going forward. Thank you.
Earl DeCue.
Good afternoon, Earl Decay, 530 Fairgrounds. Mayor Good, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the matter of the public use of the fairgrounds. Over the last several years, I have followed the issues and concerns over the use of the fairgrounds, and I've had the privilege to help my neighbors communicate their concerns to you all. I'm here today speaking for myself and not for all my neighbors. Based upon what I heard in today's presentation, I would like to personally thank the city manager and his staff for hearing and acting upon the concerns that has been expressed. I think that a steering committee is an important first step. A third-party consultant can also help move this process along and ensure everyone's concerns are addressed. The list of users of the fairgrounds looks good. However, I think it should include Equifest and Prescott Farmers Market Community Compost Program. I'm a recently retired aerospace engineer who has worked on various federal, private industry, and academic projects, some more successful than others. And looking back at my 40 years as an engineer, I think my fellow retired corporate folks on council might agree that the most successful projects are those that take care to first look at all the variables so that one can wisely determine its value to the organization and then plan towards success. I see that with the steering committee, the city will have the opportunity to reset and create a collaborative process that can properly and truly evaluates who are the users, aka customers, what are the best uses of this public asset, what's that product, and what is the true value of its what's the true cost of its use, a budget. I'm sure that there are many other details that the steering committee is going to have to evaluate, but customers, the product, the budget must first be determined. Again, thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to serving whatever capacity is called and to help create a wonderful public space that serves all of Prescott. Thank you.
Kimberly Lopez.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Dallin, thank you for coming and talking to us. My name is Kimberly Lopez. I am the president of Prescott Frontier Days Rodeo. I have the honor of speaking on behalf of my membership. Beside me here is Jason to answer Connie's questions on the taxes. We are here in the good faith of moving forward. We don't want to get into the weeds, into the negativity. That is not who we are. Well, it's not who we have ever been. I have personally asked for members of the community to come in. I have told them that I have office hours. Come in and talk to me. Walk the property. One person, scheduled time, and then canceled. So that olive branch still exists. We are not here to be a thorn in anybody's butt. We are here to go forward with what our tradition of Western heritage is. And we will keep the public at large in mind as we move forward. Jason is going to answer your questions about the taxes, but our taxes, in case Mr. Mechanic needs to know, they were filed by Slater and Rutherford. I was the individual that handled all the community requests. At one point during the course of those community requests, our office was closed for 2 weeks. We were also at NFR. There was nobody to give them to them, and I asked them to wait until I got back. When I personally got back, I took an entire day and put those packets together for them and made sure I personally had those tax returns put on GuideStar, which Bonnie recognized, by the way.
So as Kim mentioned, as Kim mentioned, we filed the taxes accordingly to our extension that was allowed. And once they were filed, we did wait to receive information from the IRS as to their reception. That was not received. As you know, the IRS is backlogged. And so therefore, we posted it on GuideStar, which is a public platform, to be able to provide our 990 with the copy that we had, which was provided by our professional services to be able to look through and see if there needed to be any changes at that time. That's why the documents that that Howard Mechanic mentioned were not signed, is because that was our copy. It was also mailed into the IRS, and yes, the IRS does accept mailing as well as electronic filing. And so they're just backlogged is really why I would say they haven't showed that they've received it. They have definitely received it according to our professional services. Was there any other questions about that at all? Okay.
Councilmember Rusing.
Hi, Jason. Could you clarify your role? Are you a
Yes.
CFO? You're the treasurer?
I'm the recorder and office manager of PFD.
The office manager and the
Recorder,
recorder. Okay.
which entails bookkeeping. I keep the titles and things like that.
Yeah, and do you have any certification or licensing in those duties?
No, I've been hired to do the books. I was hired as a contract laborer early on in 2020, and that of course was COVID year, and so got my feet wet early with 25% capacity with the rodeo, and so I've been doing bookkeeping for 7 years now, not just with Prescott Frontier Days.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Ken Telmy.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel compelled to say something first. You know, I love the rodeo, don't get me wrong. I actually, when I was 18, I rode Gymkhana in that rodeo, came up from the valley, enjoyed it, had a good time, never came back because I thought the facility was too unsafe, as did my trainer. Okay, I'm very aware of the condition of that facility. In fact, Joe Baines took me out on a little run. My niece was the American flag bearer for the rodeo for 8 years. So we go back. That's the emotional attachment to the rodeo that I have. I love history. Anybody that knows me knows that I have done a lot to preserve the history here in Prescott in terms of some of our structures. Now, I'm going to switch hats here. I'm also a businesswoman. And when I look at these kinds of losses, as a person who owns rentals, and I have several tenants, if I look at this kind of loss and somebody's coming to me to apply to be able to lease a place from me, I'm going to say, because there's no assurance that that tenant can potentially pay my overhead. So this has gone on for a long time. That's what, 4 or 5 years of losses. So my question is this. If the city were to work with you, put the $15 million in the property, how do you guys sit down when you're having your private meetings and work to rectify the situation? What is your plan going forward to say to the city, we are good for that money? We are good. We're going to work this money off. You've got a lot of losses. What is the rodeo's future plan to be able to tell the city in assurance that you're going to be able to make money and not lose money? That's my biggest concern. I want the rodeo to stay there. Do I want to foot the bill for the rodeo, or do I want to ask my constituents to foot the bill, going on forever? No, I really don't. And I did say it. I sat across the table from you, Jim Dewey, and you, Kim, and I asked you at the time, what's the plan here? And I want you to have a plan for you. It's not for me. I want the rodeo to go forward. This is 2024, okay? We have to have, in order for any business to survive, and you are a business, okay? You do contribute. It's $7 million you say here that you contribute to our community every year. $7 million in the big picture, that's a lot of money. But it's not enough, obviously, if there's losses. So can you tell us, sitting here on this panel, that need to tell our city manager today that we want to move forward? I think every one of us would like to say, go for it, move forward, have a great life. We want you to survive. But I want some sort of assurances that PFD wants to survive as much as we want you to survive. So to put $15 million into a black hole I just don't think that's a conscientious thing to do for me. I think the rodeo needs to have a plan to move forward, and I hope that you guys have sat down and tried to figure out a way to take care of these losses, because we do want you to survive.
Did you want Jim to come answer your question?
Sure. I mean, if Jim...
You have to.
If you have a plan, shed the light, because we need to know that.
The biggest thing is we'll stop putting our money into your facility. It's simple as that.
But you have a lease.
Let me answer that question. Let me answer that question for him, or what's going through everybody's mind. Since Jim has been here, we have had to go through a process of cleaning up the property. There was trash everywhere. There was broken pieces of metal, weeds. There's a lot, cement. We had to dig that up, remove it from the property, get it off the property to bring the property clean.
Kim, I need to stop you. No,
but
no, just a minute. Listen, that's not the point. You have a lease.
It is the point, because that cost us $1 million.
Just a minute. You have a lease agreement.
Correct.
And Joe Young, can you explain?
Point of order.
Can you explain, Joe, the clause in the lease?
Just broadly and generally, and I don't know how far we want to get into this, the PFD is responsible for above ground maintenance and the city is responsible for underground maintenance, broadly.
And as I started that off, I said when Jim got here, some of this was before him, and he addressed that, and he took that lease serious. And he went around and started cleaning that up. And we did what our lease required us to do. We all went out there, work party after work party. I have gentlemen that are sitting here behind me that are tirelessly out there working on those rodeo grounds to make sure it is safe, to make sure that it is clean. So yes, we have spent the money. We have put that into there. But I also want to address the fact 2 of these years were COVID years. We never did not have a rodeo. And that was our dedication to the community. We had a mayor at the time who pushed for 25% one year, 50% occupancy the next year. That was a deficit. And
Kim,
some of that deficit is in here. We didn't take federal dollars.
Can you speak to the future, though? What is the rodeo's plan?
We currently have over $2.6 million in assets. We currently have budgets that we are going through. We do those annually. They're in our strategic planning meetings. We don't just take this lightly. We understand it as a business. We understand that we are the stewards of the property and the stewards of the brand, our brand.
But do you have a business plan going forward to make yourself profitable?
Absolutely.
I guess that's what I'm
100%.
asking.
Can you tell us? I don't have the numbers in front of me.
That's not the purpose of this.
It's not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting is that we were coming here in good faith to move forward. And that is what my entire That's what my entire rodeo is going to do. We are going to move forward.
Truly Bracken.
My name is Truly Bracken, and I live at 1843 Idlewild Hill. Mr. Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And Dallin, I especially appreciate the attention that you're bringing to this process. I think it needs to be said. It also needs to be said that the challenge to the rodeo really arose when these very ambitious plans were put forward. Over $40 million worth of improvements. That was the point at which the neighborhood became aware of a dramatic expansion that was proposed for the uses and a dramatic building project in the neighborhood. I'm not going to rehash what people have said about the finances. There's a reason for us to be concerned as citizens about where the money is going to go and about the viability of the ongoing operations of Prescott Frontier Days. I think it's wise for the council to consider those issues. I'm going to suggest in my time, though, a few things that might mitigate the impact of whatever goes on the rodeo. One has been suggested by Ms. Stahl, and that is that the Miller Valley Rodeo Drive entrance would dramatically improve the impact on the neighborhood. We've mentioned this to Dallin, who was receptive to it. We've mentioned it to rodeo representatives. It's something that would not alter Gale Gardner Way with its homes, which are so close to that roadway. It would not eliminate the bike lanes, for example, in order to create a turn lane. I know it's a narrow road. I know improvements would be needed to the interconnection between Rodeo Drive and Miller Valley. But that's a possibility that needs to be seriously considered by any steering committee or advisory committee going forward. If you did not flood the neighborhood with so many cars and you did not have the enormous traffic jams, then you would be in a much different situation with the neighborhood. I also have some weeds to get into that I don't think this is the time or place to get into, which I'll do in a follow-up email, which I will send to everybody as well as to Ms. Lopez. There are questions about the parking and the traffic study, logic questions. I'm no engineer. I'm no expert on them. But there were assumptions made in coming up with the excess parking that's required, the shortfall in parking. Assumptions that I think are very seriously flawed. And not to blame the consultant, but in this situation, to deduct the normal traffic from the rodeo traffic to come up with what they consider the number of vehicles destined for the rodeo gives a very decreased number of vehicles. So they operated instead of with
Please conclude your remarks. Your time is up.
Thank you. And I will follow up with a detailed email about this. I appreciate the time.
Wayman Trujillo.
Man, 15 million really gets people's feathers ruffled, doesn't it? Good afternoon. My name is Wayman Trujillo. I'm a lifelong Prescottonian. Own a business here. It's called Think for Inc. My wife and I run it by ourselves. My uncle is J.C. Trujillo. He's the former general manager of the Prescott Frontier Days. I ask you, when you move forward, that you have somebody like Jim Dewey who knows rodeo. You guys are in charge of our city. Business owners here in charge of their business like I am. If you don't know rodeo, it's a hard business to run. That's why my Uncle JC was here. That's why Jim's here. That's something that needs to be front and center. This isn't something that somebody can come in and run. We've seen that. We had a general manager at one time, didn't know rodeo. We almost lost the rodeo. That's very, very important. The other users that are involved, 100%, they need to be here. The people that live in the neighborhoods need to be involved. Gale Gardner, whether the rodeo's there or not, at some point, probably needs to be widened. Prescott is growing. We all know that. The rodeo is, it's a staple. Look at how many people show up every year. The conflict that this has created in Prescott, I don't understand. Every single one of you has a memory of the rodeo, and I bet everybody here has a memory of the rodeo. And if you don't, you should attend, because it is a world-class event. And you can't overlook that. You can't just get rid of that. Prescott Frontier Day is a tenant, 100%. You're responsible for the grounds. Without them there, you lose the rodeo grounds. You can only sell that piece of property one time. When it's gone, it's gone. You can't move the rodeo. You will lose it. We have a lot of events in Prescott. Halloween on Mount Vernon is huge. All the events that take place downtown. Nobody's talking about closing down Halloween on Mount Vernon because of the traffic issues. Nobody's talking about not having events on downtown Prescott because of the traffic issues. Needs to be the same thing with the Prescott Rodeo. Again, $15 million, man, that's a lot of money. And I know that they could use it and they need more. Yeah, big plans scare people. It scared the hell out of me, I'm not gonna lie. But something has to be done. We have to keep that here. You have to work with the neighbors. I think you guys got a good start. I just ask you to remember that you have to have somebody on that committee that knows what's going on at that rodeo. Thank you.
Sue Knapp.
Hello, good to see you all. My name is Sue Knapp. I'm the Vice President of Prescott Alternative Transportation, so I was happy to hear bike lanes, go by. And I'd be happy to help with anything about the traffic, once the steering committee is going. I assume that will go. It's a wonderful idea. My husband Jim and I own the property at 989 Shemmer, which is just across from that open space property. So as a neighbor, I look forward to actually helping. I mean, I'm sort of chomping at the bit to help connect the open space, the neighbors, the dogs that people run there, the kids from the neighborhood, all of that into the design. So let's create a community place there. That's what I really look forward to helping with. I also have noticed that nobody's mentioned what that place looks like now. If I had come in from out of town or, somewhere else and drove by there, I would just think that's a blighted place. That shouldn't be like that. It should be a beautiful place. It's 34 acres to us, right? So rather than just, talking about paving to, abate the dust or do this for, that building or restrooms or, all of this. Let's not get into those sorts of weeds until we've looked at creating a beautiful place, and that is the principle. And I think that the rodeo should be the centerpiece. So not to say either or, I don't like to see this conflict. It shouldn't be a conflict. I think everybody should be together on this, and it should be easy. I want you to imagine that place being beautiful. Think of trees, think of dogs running, think of kids running for the rest of the year, all year round. 34 acres we can play with, and let's make it a community asset. And then finally, I just want to say, nobody said this, but the agenda item and everything today has been calling this place the Rodeo Grounds. It was earlier called the Fairgrounds. I think that's more, I just realized this, I think that's more fair. That's a little pun. But I would suggest that we start calling this place the Prescott Fairgrounds with the rodeo. It could be like a subtitle. But yeah, instead of just the rodeo grounds. So thanks so much.
Councilman Gambogi.
Mr. Mayor, I want to make a point of order. I've only heard Tony Hamer and Earl Duque speak about the proposal that Dallin Kimball made. Everyone else is trying to re-engineer the rodeo, and we're not here to do that.
That's all the public comment we have, Mayor.
Councilmember Rusing.
Yes, I think we need to spend the rest of our time discussing the possibility of hiring a consultant and what that would entail. That's in our memo. Thank you.
Okay, I think at this point we have to try to give city manager some direction on where we're going to proceed with these plans and efforts. So I'll take a comment related to that. Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate Councilman Gambogi's comments. That's the comment I was trying to make earlier, that I felt we were way off topic. I feel very strongly that we should give direction to the council, that we should create a very robust steering committee. I appreciate Wayman Trujillo's comments that we need somebody on that committee that knows rodeo, that's important. As a business owner, I can't imagine somebody else trying to come into my business and try to run it or tell me how to run it if they've never done it before. So I think that community steering committee should be maybe larger than what you recommended earlier. That's my opinion. Several people from Rodeo, several people from the community, from neighborhood, and from other users such as Matt. I think Matt should be on that committee. I love the idea of synergy that we can create at that facility. And I appreciated Sue's comments and Earl's comments, very positive, and I appreciated the positivity. Thank you.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate what Eric just said. I agree with a lot of that. I just want to point out I prepare taxes for a living, and it's not hard to believe that the IRS would not have accurate data. Just wanted to throw that out there. As someone who's currently fighting a $300,000 bill for a client, I know that they are not the sharpest tools in the shed. I want to say that I want to reiterate. I think moving forward with a committee to kind of tackle this is a good idea. I appreciate the city manager bringing it forward. I'm disheartened by the discord that still exists, but I'm hopeful that we can move forward in a positive direction where I think maybe someone else said this, I don't remember who, but the idea that no one's going to walk away 100% happy out of this process, but the idea that we can all kind of walk away feeling proud about our community and like we are a community again is kind of my hope. So that's all.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I too have that same vision that we can find a way forward. I do want to empower, I guess, Mike as the assistant city manager and leader of this to make sure that we're picking the right people that are looking at this objectively and collaboratively because on some topics I can be collaborative and on other topics I probably can't. So I want to make sure we have collaborative people working together to find a way forward for everyone to win. My concern is the consultant. Do you have folks in mind that happen to be available for around this price that you have in the memo, or is this something that we're going to have to go out to bid and it can take us a long time? I'm just worried about the $15 million, whichever version we end up getting, or hopefully that we would put any of that in risk. So do you have somebody in mind at this point?
I wouldn't say that we have a specific vendor in mind. We want to be careful, kind of like others have said, that we find somebody who's got experience designing properties like this, and that's a pretty small group of people. We also want to follow our own procurement practices, so we're probably talking about a bid process. If the council gives direction to move forward, we can start that bid process before we have the dollars allocated so that we're off and running as soon as possible.
That sounds good to me. I also am totally aligned to putting in as a line item as we start the 26 budget to put the $150,000 in, and we'll find a way of how to fund that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive also of having a consultant come, but I would like to request that you have at least one or two of the council liaisons attend those meetings to make sure that we are kept up on what's happening, what the topics are. Thanks.
Councilmember Russi.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Rodeo people for coming today and the Gail Gardner neighborhood people and everyone else. This is a wonderful example of the community coming together, and I call it making sausage. So I think we're making some headway as a result of today's meeting, and I support the steering committee, and I support looking into hiring a consultant, a third person, fresh eyes to come in and help us move forward. So I'm very excited about the future of the rodeo. I'd like to see it kept traditional. It's part of our heritage. It's very prestigious, and it's a very important part of our community. And I also want to thank those hardworking year-round 500 to 600 volunteers that put in all of the sweat equity. Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Dallin, I have a question just for my understanding of the process. Do we want a consultant right at the beginning, or is it better to start with a steering committee to form some basis for then hiring a consultant, or do we want these processes running concurrently? I don't understand if there's a value in hiring consultants so early in the process, or would it be better to maybe have a steering committee for 6 months and get a framework and then bring on a consultant to help finish that process?
Yeah, when it comes to design, I'd want the consultant in from the beginning. So that they hear all of the same conversations and they understand where we're coming from. I would bring them in pretty early. We may have the steering committee together in time to inform the RFP for that consultant, but I would want them in as early as we can get them.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we've had strategic planning meetings where we've had consultants being able to guide discussions so that we maintain a focus on where we want to end up. So I think having a consultant early on would be very beneficial to make sure that steering committee members don't focus on a particular part of a plan that turns out to be impractical to actually be included in a final plan. So I think having a consultant available early on is a good idea. Also having Mike Morris be the kind of the guiding overall manager of this, because even though some people might criticize Mike for not being here very long, his history of dealing with some of these issues I think is going to be good. He can step away from it a little bit and look at it in an objective way. Clearly, we saw from the comments we heard today that there's still a lot of conflict and a little bit of animosity between the neighborhood members and PFD, and even Sue Knapp's comment about maybe describing this more as an overall multi-event fairgrounds that happens to have the primary tenant be PFD, takes away a little bit of that expectation that all the decisions are going to be made based upon PFD's concerns. Because we do have the county fair, we have multiple other equine related events that happen there, some non-equine events that this area and these grounds have to accommodate. So I think with all that said, I think you have a pretty good idea of where we want to go here.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
We have any other final comments or concerns? Thank you, all the PFD members and the members of the community. Obviously, this is a major issue, and even Mr. Hamer's comments about how the city is branded and how it's recognized both statewide and even nationally, possibly even internationally. When we're recognized in True West Magazine's Best Of, being one of the top rodeo events in the whole, well, I guess we have to include Canada, so we'll call that in the whole world. We want to make sure that rodeo continues to have the recognition and the high priority that it's always had, and maybe even better going into the future. So I think at this point we'll adjourn this meeting.